Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of She's a Boss podcast. And today, I'm very, very excited to speak to a creative spirit, Sonja SABP. Sonja's tagline is that she's a passionate artist that loves to share the creative spark. I first met Sonja when I joined her adult art classes that she runs for people to find their inner artist. And what a fun time I had at those lessons. I learned so much from her, and I still use what I learned. Well, I try to, at least on a daily basis. You were such an inspiration, Sonja, and I'm forever grateful to you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Sham. I'm delighted to speak to you today, and it was such a pleasure having you in my classes as well, because the classes are only ever as good as the participants and the creative spirits that come to the classes.
Some background first on Sonja. So she studied art, history, psychology, educational sciences, but she's now professionally focused on creating art. And more importantly, I would think, because it happened to me, she's focused on passing the creative spark to others. Sonja is Dutch-German. She moved to Luxembourg in the 90s, which makes her a polyglot as well. She currently runs children art classes and also adult art classes in various settings. And her own art. She expresses her perception of the world, and her work is exhibited widely, and you'll be able to check some of her work out on her website as well, which I will give the link to shortly. Sonja, welcome to the show again, and let's jump straight in. Can you tell us why you teach art, if I could call it teaching rather than it's an almost therapy, actually?
Well, you can still call it teaching. The path to teaching art was not as natural as you would maybe at outset believe, because I studied art to be an arts teacher, but for me that was a way to be able to teach art. My parents would have otherwise not allowed me to study art. I come from a family background where my dad was an engineer and my mom worked in public institution. And the least thing yet that you want for your child is to go into the art world. So it was a little bit of a way for doing what I loved most, to study art. But it was for me clear already when I was studying art that I didn't necessarily wanted to go into the school service. So it took me a little detour for quite some years, actually, where I first worked in marketing, yes, also in training, in the different training fields for the European institutions. And I worked in marketing in the sense of setting up strategies for websites. And in that way, it was always about communication and structuring information to communicate with other people. But really coming back to art and teaching art was really through our son. He's now 11 years old. When he was first born, I started to paint with our son, not when he was first born, but when he was about a year and a half old. I started to paint with him with finger paints and with music, and let him play and express his little creative soul. And it was really so that when friends saw what he made and what I did with him at home, that they said, "Oh, that's really nice. Can't you do that with our children as well?" And I said, "Yes, if you find me a location where I can do it, because I can do it with one child and my child at home. But if I do it with more children, not in my home, because it's just as at outset a messy business, and you need to have a space where you can do that." And then I was lucky through friends who found me a space here in Luxembourg that I could use for creative sessions. And it started really with small kids, and it was with little testers where I provided space and the knowledge and the materials for the kids to try things out. And only then, step by step, I connected to my original kind of education, really, and started to teach art again. And coming back to your question, is it teaching art or is it art therapy? It's really, I teach art. Art therapy is a different kind of thing as such. But what I do in my art classes is I help people to to reconnect to their inner creative being, to their inner child that likes to create. And that's what I do for the kids classes. In kids classes, it's normally much easier, because for children, you just need to provide them with a space, a spark of imagination and the materials, and then they go wild. It's really this unbound creativity, because kids have no limits, and then they try everything and go for it. And especially in this age group, 3 years to 8 years, they're really unbound in their creativity. Then later, I think it's important that you help children and teenagers to stay original to themselves, even though they learn more techniques and try to get better in their technique and expression. And with the adults, really, it's with the adult classes, it's really about helping the adults to reconnect to this inner creative child, to dare to be expressive, and to understand that perfectionism or perfection is not needed. Whereas I think perfection doesn't really exist, and it has certainly no place in art. So
yeah,
that's what I do.
We'll come back to a little bit about how your classes differ from the different age groups, but there's something you mentioned right on the onset, and it brings up the whole question, because when you said that your parents, they would not have allowed, you know,
Yes.
a child of theirs to have gone into the arts, and that to me brings up something quite integral. Like, you know, everyone who wants to go into art or starts doing it, there's always a perception about it. I would really love to hear your thoughts.
Sorry. Sorry,
Oh,
Sean.
I'm sorry. I caught you off guard there. No, my question was that you said that your parents had not thought that
Yes.
they would have allowed you to do it. And do you still encounter this type of mindset these days? Do you see it in the adults you teach it to? Do you see it in parents who bring their children to the school, your art classes?
Well, I think nowadays parents understand a bit better. I think some parents are more open to support their kids in the artistic expression, because they understand we are standing at the verge of a new industrial revolution, and that creativity is really important. Nobody can tell you what is a good subject to study for the next 10, 20 years, or for the next 10 years, because we don't know in which direction the development goes. So to stay open-minded and be open to develop your creativity, or the creativity of your child, is certainly a good thing. So I think parents are more open to that today. Nevertheless, I think sometimes I see that, because I have very talented children that I'm able to teach, and some of them are true artists. You can see it already, even though they're 8, 9 years old. But still, sometimes I see it with parents. They think, oh God, I have a little artist. Oh dear God, what shall happen with this child? And I can see it when the parents, and instead of seeing it's a huge gift that they have, they still find it dubious. That's part of it. And yeah, but I mean,
you play quite a crucial role, I think, which brings me to my next question, which is, what do you do exactly? How do you do? If you could first walk us through what it is that you throw yourself into with your children classes, and then after that, let's tackle what you do with the adults.
Okay. Well, in the children's classes, I try to think of interesting, inspirational ideas. How to learn certainly new techniques for the kids, but also always, I find it equally important to give them a choice of possibility where they can express their imagination, and to encourage to play with their imagination. Because I think in a school environment is very much about curriculum, and it's all about new techniques, whereas I have the luxury in my classes to to really provide them with a different skill sets, where it's really important about encouraging the imagination. Yes, you also learn some skill sets, but it's also about the fun and learning how to express yourself. And what I do in my kids classes, but actually also in the adults classes, at the end of each class, we reflect a little bit about the process as well. And the kids learn how to express themselves about their process. So I ask what they have learned in the session. Was there anything new they learned? But not only about technical things, but also about processes that you can use. And I'm obviously totally delighted when sometimes you have these moments when the kids say, yes, I learned today that actually when I make art, I don't need to be perfect. It's not about perfection. It's about enjoying the process, and then something beautiful comes out. And those are the highlights.
Yeah, I mean, making it just not goal driven, and that is one of the things that's quite hard, because I have young children myself, so it's sometimes quite easy to see they can get so easily diverted with reaching the end and not enjoying the journey.
Absolutely. And really that's, I think that enjoying the journey is the thing for art classes. I think it's totally important that you enjoy the process, and that's for kids classes or adults classes alike. It's really about the moment of the creation rather than the end result. Always. I mean,
I was going to ask you then what you do with the adult classes, because I was there. I remember that group almost became like not a counseling group, but people started to talk about what was going on, and then it becomes from the next exercise.
Yeah, I think that the groups become very supportive of each other, because obviously you need to first create a safe space for people to express themselves, because we come from all different walks of life, and I have a mixture of really people come from all walks of life. There can be lawyers, there can be engineers, there can be women that have been staying at home for a few years, and let me say it's mostly women. I would say 95% of my class participants in the adults classes are women. When I go into the corporate world with creative team building events, then it's slightly different. But let's say my private art classes, there the participants are 95% women, and I think women create this kind of sharing place, this kind of common ground, and then it becomes very open, and that is a safe ground to share experiences, and I find that really valuable. And in Luxembourg, I think it's also this big gift that we have a very international environment. That's what I really enjoy about the classes, where people from not only from all walks of life come together, but from all different countries. I love when I have a class of 10 people together with people from China, from Egypt, from Israel, from Greece, from the Baltic countries, from America, and then we still, it's a little bit like the United Nations, and we still share the same kind of need to express ourselves creatively.
Mm-hmm.
And it's,
I mean, it's great that you then provide, like, I mean, one thing is just wanting to channel our inner artist, but having some sort of a process, I suppose, helps everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But now let's get to you, your art, your creative process. How does Sonja, the painter, the artist,
work? Well, I walk my talk. I walk my talk. Essentially, the things that I teach are the same kind of processes that I use for my own creative work. So I need to also take care of my creative batteries. I need to take care of a good balance in my life, where I take good care, number one, of my soul and my inner creative artist by meditating on a regular basis, by making sure I have time to ponder and think. And then I go up regularly to the atelier and put on music and start creating. And the things that I teach in my classes about a series process that helps you not to get stuck on little details, these are all the processes that I use in my own work. Because I know exactly the tips and tricks that I need to use in order to avoid procrastination, the tips and tricks that I need to avoid being hung up about one little detail in a painting. And then I use these kind of processes for myself as well.
That's a really fabulous terminology that you had there, your creative batteries, because
Yes.
I suppose all of us need it, even those of us who are not working and just creating art and taking care of your inner creative artist, which I know you talk about it a lot in class, but already as you just answered this question, I could see how we can all just learn from your work or learn from your process. But is there something that strikes out to you about how this would translate into others' day-to-day life, your creative process? Like, how can we learn from your work?
I think taking care of your inner artist is a really important factor, and also just working on. I need to think a little bit about that.
I mean, you said that you avoid procrastination.
Yes.
You have all these techniques, and this is something that usually the rest of us get caught up with. We tend to procrastinate, or we put things away, or we think it's not good enough. We get caught up with the smallest detail.
Yeah, I think what helps me is really to do all these things. Like I have them, for example, in order to not be stuck up with this idea of perfectionism, I have these things where I draw with a non-dominant hand. I do a bit of blind drawing to be free in the line. There are all these tips and tricks, and I think all artists effectively always also have these kind of moments where it's difficult to work and to get right in, but it's these methods that we all share and that try to in order
push
not
you a little bit out of like the
Absolutely.
spot that you get stuck in, I suppose.
Yeah. I think I need to do that again, Sham, because there is like there are two different things that I'm mixing now. I'm mixing the method with, and that's not a method that I can necessarily, that is not transferable outside of the art world. I think.
No, go take it again. Go with it. Answer again.
So the question was, what can I share for the wider world?
What can the rest of us learn from your work, the way you work? Because you say you go through a process, you do your work. Because what struck to me when you were speaking is that, like, if you start to procrastinate, you stop yourself. If you go through certain techniques. So those are the methodologies that you have for yourself. And I think the things that struck up, or to me, what I would learn from what you said immediately is that, you take care of your creative batteries, you push yourself, you get out of spots. So these are things that I feel the rest of us can learn from the way you work.
Okay.
And,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
So, Sonja, how can the rest of us learn from your work?
Well, I think taking care of your inner artist is something, and we don't need to call it inner artist. It sounds so big, then we feel we all need to be artists. But I think taking care of your inner soul, with making sure there's inspiration for it, making sure this little soul has enough rest in order to be ready to create again. And it's about making and taking time for that, and looking at the agenda in all the busy lives that we have, to make appointments with yourself, in order to do something that makes your heart jump, that creates joy for yourself. Because only if we take care of the inner artist like that, we feel like coming up with creative ideas. It's almost like recharging a battery. And if you never take time to recharge the battery, then it's very difficult to take energy out. So it's important what kind of energy you put in order to be creative at the end. Sham?
I absolutely love that phrase, make an appointment with yourself to do something that makes you jump. I think that's amazing. I just love that the way you phrase that in itself, because it's something that a lot of us forget to do, or just
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And also we totally forget it. I mean, in daily work life, but also I think when you balance work life with a family, good Lord, do we forget about that? It's like,
absolutely.
But
Sonja,
stolen moments.
Yeah, that made me think as well, because there's one part of it where you, all your training and your creation. So you create your work, and then you also then teach art. But there's another big aspect to this. You also need to put together those classes, market the whole aspect. I mean, you're the boss of your own business. And so how do you, first of all, do that? How do you make time for that?
Well,
quite important aspect.
I think obviously I still take it as a huge blessing that I can do what I do. So it is, as in fact, the way you said, I develop, set together classes, but I need to market them, I need to administer them and manage them. And find time for my own creation. Finding the good balance between all these elements is sometimes difficult. My own creation is sometimes a little bit cut short by those things. Nevertheless, it's sincere fun, but it's a seven days a week job. And at nighttime when I'm in bed, I'm thinking already about the next kind of class concept that I could do and how I can develop that. Which is really funny, because at outset I was saying or explaining that when I went to university, I went to university to study art and history, to be a teacher, but it was clear to me then already that I didn't want to go the normal path of the teacher. So teaching was always for me, I don't want to be a teacher. And the biggest miracle of my life path is actually now that I'm so passionate about teaching and that I love teaching. That is...
How do you keep your energy? That's something that even through this conversation, you're like, it's beaming through, and then having spent time with you in your classes, like you keep the momentum going and you never let it slide. So what gives you that spark?
The spark is coming back from others as well. It's not that I am only putting energy into a big black hole. It's not like that. I'm actually lucky to get all this energy back from my participants as well. Obviously, it's very satisfying to see when you teach something and the grains fall onto a fruitful ground where people then really say, oh, yes, I've reconnected to my inner self. I've been doing some of the things you told us last week, and I find it's helpful. Or yes, wow, all these cool artworks start coming out now. And so in that sense, it gives also a lot of energy back. Sometimes I need weeks of time out for myself. I mean, something that I also really create on, or work on to have every year. Every year I go for an art workshop, for an art retreat just for myself, because it's not only that I'm the eternal teacher. It's also I find really important that I'm a student, and then I'm learning from other artists how they do it, and yeah, I profit from that enormously. And
Yeah, of
and that's
course.
part of it also, like energy wise. I think meditation keeps me in balance, and yeah, and sometimes I have days
Going.
where I'm tired, you know, but that's normal. I think that's part of it too. And then I allow myself time to recover and to feed my energy by looking at interesting exhibitions, meeting with friends. Do you remember the exercise that we had where we wrote this list, what feeds your inner artist? And I have this list of 10, 15 things. And then when I'm exhausted and tired, I go to my list and look, okay, what of these things can I do now in order to re-energize myself?
Oh, that's also a very good tip and trick for all the rest of us in whatever, be it, you know, not just creating art, but just going on with it.
Absolutely. Like when I created my first adults class, which is called Boost Your Creativity. It's really this kind of 6 weeks program for people to really connect to their inner artist. And it's about jumping right in. It's about managing your expectations. It's about that the perfection is not needed. It's about feeding your inner artist. And it's all about like eye-opening exercises together with really practical tips and tricks to really follow up on this path. And when we talk about the artist within, really one of the exercises is as well to create a list of the things, that feed your inner artist, that make you happy, because it's a really vital part, as we mentioned before. It's in order to be creative and to be open, you need to do something for yourself, and that's whether we work in the creative fields or whether you work wherever you are. It's important taking care of yourself.
Sonja, what in all the teaching that you do and the work that you create for yourself, is there anything that you've considered a failure?
Failure is failure sounds a really big word. Failure means like not successful. I think when you work in the creative field, you need to be open to make mistakes. I think it's really important to allow yourself to make mistakes. And so I don't know whether that is the failure, but I think it's important to allow yourself making mistakes, because if you don't, or if you avoid making mistakes, then you might miss the point of finding new original work. So I find it really, really important, if you want to have a creative environment, to allow space for mistakes, and then don't hang up on them, just continue growing. It's just a natural process of trial and error, trial and failure. I don't know. It's kind of trial and error. Okay, I try something new I want to try. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay, I try again. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay, then I take a different path. It's more like that. So failure, no, I don't define.
I can see that you see it as just part of the whole creative
part of the process of growing, really. It's like, oh, okay, it doesn't work like that. Well, it might work another way, and that's how you grow. It's just part of a development process. It's more seeing that life is not. I don't think life is one hierarchical line upwards. I think it's really, Sir Ken Robinson expressed it one time really nicely, and he's one of my creative idols, that life is organic. It goes in different waves and developments, and sometimes you might need to go back a certain path in order to come out on the other end. But that's...
So you're not just Sonja, the artist, you're also Sonja, the philosopher. I realize that.
One doesn't go without the other. It's always.
What about successes, Sonja? What do you consider a success for yourself?
What I consider a success is that when these spark moments happen, when the things that I try to teach are falling onto fertile ground, when I hear and see that it clicked, that makes me incredibly happy, and those are my success moments. And also for my own art, obviously, when I managed to set up a successful exhibition in the way that people react to it by saying, oh, I'm standing here and I'm recharging my energy just looking at your paintings or your works, then that's what I find very
Oh, what a
satisfying.
blessing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that's
Sonia,
where I think,
sorry.
yeah, then I'm happy, and that's fantastic. And then I get also so thankful for being able to do what I do.
Amazing. What would you like to impart as advice? Like, I think just by speaking to you in this conversation, I'm reminded of a lot of like lessons and tips, tricks, processes that you had brought into teaching art, but also in this conversation, you've mentioned it, and it's something that we can all glean from. But what can you, what would you like to share as a bit of advice to the rest of us?
Well, creativity is contagious, so please pass it on. I mean,
Oh, that's beautiful.
Whether Albert Einstein, this is normally referred to Albert Einstein, that he said it, creativity is contagious, so please pass it on, or pass it on. Whether he said it or not, it really doesn't matter. But I think creativity is contagious, so please pass it on. Whatever you have in you that needs to be expressed, pass it on, because it's important for the rest of the world, for us all to share.
Oh, that's just beautiful. Thank you so much. That's such a beautiful place also for us to end this conversation, because I think I could continue talking to you to keep gleaning more and more about the process.
We always, but that's what I also really loved about working with you. That was really where we connected in a spirit way, where we could continue forever.
You're very kind. So I would say that if anybody is interested, first of all, to look at Sonja's art, we can check her website out. I'll put on the website address, and then by email, I presume, Sonja, that's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, by email via sonja@sonjasoyer.com. And then I'm delighted to be in touch. If you're creative, help us to create more sparks outside, and pass.
So if anyone is interested to talk about, the contagious artistic spirit, or even, but that's one element of it. I think to round up the whole thing, I would say that, there's this the strong artist and the teacher of art in you, but you've also had to get this whole show, monetized, and there's another process to that, and that's where learning to make something you're passionate about also work for yourself and for your family. That's also quite crucial.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, and for that, I'm so thankful to you for having taken the time to talk to us. And
it was my pleasure, Sham. It was really
Take care, Sonja. I look forward to seeing more of your work.
Super.
And wishing you all the success.
Thank you very much, Sham. All the best to you.